What's going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having yourselves a wonderful day, wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this. Today, we're going to be jumping back into the SCP universe as we take a look at SCP-4812 Wrath by the Exploring series. As we got through the Ouroboros cycle, we're going to now continue on with the Kaksu-verse. So we're going to do their first video in this playlist here today. Links will be down below in the description, as always, to the Exploring series and this original video without my commentary and reaction. Please do me the favor, if you will, of clicking on those links and give this video a like if you enjoy it. And if you enjoy the Exploring series content, please go over there and give the man a sub. He definitely deserves it, as he has made a lot of wonderful content for the SCP universe as well as many other universes. So definitely deserves some love. So do me a favor and do that. If you'd like to join us when we do these live reactions, come and join the discussions as we go through them. There's a join button underneath the video. You can take a look at the YouTube membership benefits and the tiers that I offer. See if any of them have any kind of interest. You can get early access videos. You can join us when we do these live reactions. You can get priority queue and any kind of video reaction requests you'd have me do, etc., etc. So just take a look and see if you decide you want to become a YouTube member. With all that said and shameless plugs done, let's get into this video. Again, SCP-4812 Wrath.
SCP-4812.
Oh shit, we're already starting off with art from Dark Souls 3? Hold up. Okay.
Wrath. The SCP universe is primarily one focused around humans and...
Use a lot of Dark Souls related imagery for this one because, well, you'll see. Alright, I mean, if this has stuff that's related to Dark Souls, I'm already down with it. I already know I'm gonna enjoy it. Like, you don't have that. Say less.
The effects that these anomalies have on human life. There are articles I've touched upon, though, that are about anomalies interacting with other anomalies, and histories of species other than humans. History often bleeds into the present, though, and with SCP-4812, we'll be looking at some remnants from a couple past kingdoms and setting up for something larger.
Okay.
SCP-4812 describes not one, but 3 separate entities that are collectively designated as 4812.
Interesting.
Conveniently, one of them is classified as safe, one is Euclid, and one is Keter, so we can refer to them as S, E, and K for simplicity. There's also mention of a 4th redacted entity, but we'll get to that one towards the end.
Alrighty.
4812-S is a large amorphous entity located in a pitch-black cavern underneath France. It's attached to the cave walls by a number of long adhesive appendages.
Very much 610 vibes here.
And its body is covered in many more of these appendages. The entire entity is covered in fine, water-repellent hair. S's anomalous effect is that any living being that views it, either directly or through images or videos, will experience a violent, fatal reaction that is similar to covering your eyes, brain, and nervous system in extremely caustic acid.
What the fuck?
This effect is immediate and untreatable once initiated, leading victims to suffer severe pain, bleeding through skin and orifices, paralysis, asphyxiation, and eventually death.
Yikes, brother.
For this reason, no amount of light is to be let into the cave, and only a completely blind MTF is allowed to interact with the entity.
What was that? There was an agent or whatever that they'd mentioned, and I think the Tower SCP or whatever, who was some special agent who was blind that sent up there. I wonder if they used her for this before that happened.
Even the hairs shaved off of the creature cause severe nausea, hallucinations, and swelling of the eyes and brain if viewed, leading to death as well if not treated promptly. Because of these effects, the Foundation isn't really sure what the creature truly looks like, but they do believe that its appendages extend deep into the earth around the cave. Since the cave is sealed with multiple maximum security vault doors, and 4812-S doesn't really do much, it's pretty safe. So far, so bloodborne, but we're ramping up now for 4812-E.
This is definitely very eldritch horror-ish.
E is a humanoid entity around 15 meters, or 50 feet in length, constructed primarily of platinum and other metals.
Damn, okay.
Its anomalous effect is that it's a near-perfect heat sink, and the temperature around its body normally is extremely cold. Basically, its body automatically sucks the heat from around it,
absorbs heat from
and
the
it's
surrounding
capable of
area.
reducing a standard containment cell to near absolute zero in around 16 seconds. Because of this
Okay.
effect, E is constantly surrounded by an aura of frozen air and water, unless exposed to high temperatures, obscuring its true appearance. Obviously, this effect is pretty lethal to humans, killing in seconds as
Right.
the water inside of their bodies freezes. E is contained then by being kept inside of a tank of molten iron in a containment chamber that's kept at a constant 1400 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
A drop in internal temperature of more than 50 degrees is considered a breach of containment.
Makes sense.
Okay, a little trickier, but still contained.
Right.
The Foundation is having a lot of trouble, though, with 4812-K. K is a massive winged insectoid resembling a cross between a stag beetle and a scorpion.
Wonder if this has something to do with any of the cicada stuff.
It's roughly 180 meters, or nearly 600 feet in length, with 6 appendages, 2 of which end in large pincers, and a long tail ending in a serrated barb.
Send in Godzilla. They'll take care of it, you know? Send in Godzilla and Mothra. They'll take care of it.
Curiously, though, instead of an insectoid mouth and eyes, it instead has a human face, the size
That's straight out of Bloodborne too. Like Patches in Bloodborne was a spider with a human face. That's kind of terrifying.
of a normal human male, meaning that it looks especially small compared to its massive body. It also has 4 wings, and its entire body is covered in a thick, highly reflective chitin, making it nearly invisible visually. K spends most of its time in the upper stratosphere of Earth, rarely moving in any perceptible way except to maintain altitude. Because of its invisibility, the fact that it doesn't produce heat or reflect sound, and its rate of movement meant that the Foundation had no idea it even existed for a long time. Now that they know it exists, though, they of course have to try and contain it, but it's been rough going.
I bet.
Any ship or drone that could keep pace with it, as it can travel in excess of 800 kilometers per hour, are easily destroyed by its strength and size. Any weapon that has actually connected with it has not damaged it in any perceptible way. In fact, it would seem that any kinetic energy that collides with it is reflected entirely, leading Foundation researchers to think that the entity is in some way a near-perfect reflector.
I would think you would want, like, it's something that's been up in the upper stratosphere. I don't know. I feel like this would be like a situation where it's like, is it self-contained, you know? Like, would you, you know? One of those things where it's like, I wonder if it's damned if you do or damned if you don't. You know what I mean? Like, it has the potential to be, you know, an anomaly, obviously. Who knows what it could actually do? It has the potential to be, you know, a super dangerous thing, but it's like, it hasn't done anything as far as we know in existence, right? Since the SCP Foundation has been around. They didn't even know it existed for a certain period of time. And now you're fucking with it. Like, what happens if you just piss it off and it decides to come down and destroy everything? It seems to be like perfectly fine just staying up there on its own, you know? So it's like a situation where it's self-contained and you just need to observe it. But then I guess you would also need to do some kind of experimentation to find out if you can even hurt it. So if something does happen and it decides to attack, you would have some kind of preparation, you know? I don't know. So I feel like this is like a damned if you do or damned if you don't situation.
So far, then, we have 3 rather unique entities, none of which really pose an excessive threat.
They also
but
don't seem related
to be
in any way.
connected in any meaningful way. We're told that none of the entities should ever be exposed to either of the other 2, but we'll have to read on to find out more. The next
is this like a Voltron situation or something like that, where if they combine together, they form some kind of super being?
item related to 4812 is a series of documents and artifacts recovered from an anomalous collector before his death.
Like, are each of these supposed to be like aspects of a greater whole or whatever? and these are like the physical manifestations of its consciousness or something like that. You know, I don't know how I'm trying to explain it.
The collection is named the Conington set, after the 18th century English archaeologist and occultist Winston J. Conington, whose research...
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's a threat to normalcy, so they're not going to leave it alone. Great, exactly. But there's often times where it's like you start fucking, like, you start poking the bear's gonna, you know, come at you. You know what I'm saying? You know, so it's like there are certain situations where I feel like I mean, but this is just, again, me and what I would do if I was like the head of the SCP. You know what I'm saying? Like, so.
Research led the Foundation to discover multiple SCPs. The collection includes 16 coins of various shapes and sizes, none of which match any known currency, 5 Egyptian papyrus scrolls that appear to be ancient star maps, with illegible notes in the margins that seem to have been bleached out at some point, 3 large leather-bound tomes written in German, full of what appeared to be archaic coordinates.
And I feel like there's been enough situations where they should have, like, learned from that by now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I get that various canons aren't necessarily connected and stories aren't necessarily connected and, you know, et cetera, but you'd think, like, at some point in time, doing things and playing with things that you're not fully understanding of, that doesn't seem to be impacting anything negatively, like, you're just asking for trouble kind of a situation. You know what I mean?
With one book marking changes in temperature. These books were seemingly written over the course of many years. A brass spyglass with a cracked crystal lens containing a number of small ornate mechanisms. A thick burlap sack containing at least 3 more consecutive burlap sacks, and in the center, a thick gelatinous mass.
Do they not know that you should not put, you know, a bag of holdings together, dude? Like, that, like, disrupts the space-time continuum and destroys the universe.
Looking at the sack tends to make subjects feel ill and suffer from a slight burning sensation behind their eyes. A pair of glasses with iron frames and solid iron lenses, which, when worn, show a slight glow when looking at the burlap sack. A thin circlet made of gold and platinum, with 3 prongs situated around the circlet, 2 of which are broken, and 1 contains a small glass sphere that is warm to the touch. Finally, there's a journal, written by Conington himself, which contains depictions of all 3 4812 entities and his personal research. One of the 3 leather-bound books has a short section in Italian, presumably written by a different author than the rest, containing a list of names and dates.
You know, I don't know, I was just thinking, like, the first entity that he mentioned in this, like, you can't see because then it causes, you know, like, acid to burn out your eyes and your insides and what happen, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, like, what happens if, like, you have, like, a drone go in and take a picture of it, and that picture goes directly to some kind of AI system, and then the AI system, like, is able to describe to you what it is, right? You don't get, like, a physical picture of it, you know? But, like, does that affect the AI system that way? You know what I mean? Like, any of the Anderson Robotics creations, any of the androids or whatever, like, if they were to go in there, would it happen to them too? Or is it something that just affects, like, living, I guess, quote unquote, living creatures, humanoids, etc.? That'd be interesting. Did that to the director and director, so I think the descriptions count. Yeah, I can see that then. Even just a general description of it, I guess, would do it. Which also, I guess, goes along with the other SCP or whatever, where if, like, you take a look at it, the Shy Guy one, you know, you take a look at it and it flips out and hunts you down until it kills you.
Many of than the bound books has a short section in Italian, presumably written by a different author than the rest, containing a list of names and dates. Many of the dates have another number written after the date, such as 1343-89, listed next to the name Tornold of Yair. The rest of the section has been translated for us, and it's here we get our first bit of history. There apparently was a great old lost kingdom that was respected above all others, known as the House of Apollyon, or the Sky Kings of Old Europe.
Okay.
The first of their kings, Harion von Apollyon I, was said to have descended from the blood of the King of Crimson Skies, often called Assem, the First Man. The Sky Kings apparently ruled Old Europe for 100 generations, facing opposition from the Deva to the east and those faithful to the Iron God to the south.
Okay, interesting. See, this is the stuff that interests me. I love like old, like mythological history stuff. So like this depiction of a lost kingdom that was there around or before the time of the Davites and even interacted and were warring with or defending themselves against the Davites and, you know, the Meccans, etc., etc. I like this shit.
Presumably, they ruled Old Europe for 100 generations, facing opposition from the Deva to the east and those faithful to the Iron God to the south, presumably meaning the Mechanites,
right,
the precursors to the Church of the Broken God. The House of Apollyon were conquerors, and it was some conquered foes that first called King Itus von Apollyon Sky King, because it was said that his reach extended past the bounds of the earth.
Okay.
Complacency reared its ugly head, though, and eventually King Sarus von Apollyon VIII grew bored with ruling Old Europe and set out to conquer an even greater realm. He looked past the lands of men, across the sea where the fair folk were said to live, and set sail with the largest army ever assembled on the path of unnecessary war. I've talked about fairies in the SCP universe before.
Yeah, we're starting to get into some deep lore shit here now. Okay, this feels like the Conan Hyborian age kind of shit, you know, like prehistory. Okay.
I've talked about fairies in the SCP universe before, in SCP-4000 and the Factory 001 proposal, but knowledge of these articles is irrelevant for this one. The fair folk were caught up in a war with the emerging power of the Children of the Moon, presumably meaning SCP-1000, and were blindsided by Sarus's attack.
So the fairies were already fighting Bigfoots, and then the humans, Sky People, came in and blindsided the fairies, okay? Which would explain why they would have lost a lot of people. They're already embroiled in a large war with another species, and then, yeah, the humans came in and started attacking them on another front.
Their people were utterly brutalized and scattered, with the nobility stripped down and mutilated.
Gotcha.
Only one survivor was taken as a trophy, a Fey princess. The princess had other plans, though, and on the return trip, she cast a wicked spell upon the House of Apollyon and the Sky King in particular, bringing a terrible storm down onto the ships. During this, she prayed to an old and nameless god for vengeance upon the House of Apollyon, and legend says that her iron chains caught fire and burned Sarus's ship to cinder. They also say that Sarus himself was dragged down into the ocean depths by those same iron chains.
Oh shit, okay.
The destruction wasn't total, and the remaining ships managed to still take the princess back to the kingdom, where young Sarus von Apollyon IX now ruled. Knowing what she had done, Sarus threw the princess into a dungeon deep beneath the earth and sealed it, leaving her to rot in the dark. To assist in preventing any further retribution from the fair folk and their dark magic, Sarus appointed 4 great knights to defend the kingdom: Lahair the Fierce, Lancelot the Cunning, Hector the Stalwart, and Ogier the Faithful.
Interesting. Okay. So, like, you're getting into, like, also different eras of mythology here. You got Arthurian stuff with Lancelot. You got Iliad stuff with Hector, potentially, I'm assuming. And I'm not sure what the other knights' names would be references to. Let me hear them again.
To rot in the dark. To assist in preventing any further retribution from the fair folk and their dark magic, Saurus appointed 4 great knights to defend the kingdom. Lahire the Fierce.
Lahire the Fierce. I don't know what that might be a reference to either. So, like, they said Lancelot, I believe, so that's obviously, you know, reference to Arthurian legend. And then Hector, which could be a reference to Iliad. I'm not sure what this first one would be a reference to or what the last one could be a reference to, but I'm assuming because Lancelot and Hector are potential references, that these other ones would be references to. There's ones that I'm not aware of.
Lancelot the Cunning, Hector the Stalwart, and Ogier the Faithful. So far, this is just starting to sound like the plot for Dark Souls 4, and while we can safely guess that the amorphous entity in the cave under France is the fairy princess, the explanation for the other 2 is a little murkier. Unfortunately, the majority of Conington's journal is written in a cipher, but a few short sections have been translated. One section quotes an archivist that worked for the House of Apollyon and discusses the first of the Great Profanities. Apparently, the voice of the enemy beneath the earth spoke to the souls of the 4 great knights, and Sky King Apollyon was forced to banish them. The long night settled over his kingdom, and the winter winds came from the east, but Hector did not answer. From the far darkness came something called the Venuvinex, or the Profane Restrictor, the first of the Great Profanities.
It's definitely starting to sound like Dark Souls.
The Venuvinex cast a cold hand across the king's only daughter, killing her. The king retaliated by taking the godless lance and the mammoth's hide and drove the spear into the Venuvinex, driving it into the flaming heart of the earth. Interesting. And it's worth noting that the 4 knights are not the 4812 entities. They became something else that isn't really relevant here.
Something else.
The point is that they couldn't protect the kingdom from these profanities.
Right.
The first of which seems to be E, the metallic entity that sucks the heat from the air around it. The king lost his daughter to this monster, but he managed to drive it deep into the earth where the great temperature will subdue it, using the godless lance. As for the identity of this lance,
the godless lance, I would assume, is the lance in the Ouroboros cycle, the spear that is like the spear of like the unbeliever or whatever, if I remember the name of it correctly.
If you're familiar with the Ouroboros cycle, you've heard of it before, referred to as the spear of the non-believer.
Spear of the non-believer.
Another section discusses another of these profanities, the profane adamant, also called the Lamenelant, or the King of Many Faces by the Deva. This would be 4812-K, and it apparently caused a lot of issues for the Deva, as it appeared as if from a space beyond space to destroy their kingdom.
Interesting.
Anything that the Deva and their warriors tried to do against the creature was turned back on themselves, and when they had been ground into dust, the creature took their faces and returned to the skies.
Yikes.
The final of the profanities was known as the Profane Dark, as it festered in the enemy's grave until it soaked through the earth and burst out. It proceeded to pull the Sky King into the void, and the Sky King cursed it by calling it Yash, the last foe of man.
Right, yeah. If it's something that could wipe out the Davites, that's something pretty serious, right?
The final of the profanities was known as the Profane Dark, as it festered in the enemy's grave until it soaked through the earth and burst out. It proceeded to pull the Sky King into the void, and the Sky King cursed it by calling it Yash, the last foe of man. And when the Sky King watched as his kingdom was ruined without the assistance of the 4 knights, all he could repeat was one word: wrath. The author says that he has seen the face of the Lamenelant, and he knows of the fiery chasm in which the Venuvinex seethes, but he dares not seek out the Profane Dark. Quoting another author, they write that the eyes of Yash offer no release into death, only the winding roads of torment that lead to the puller of eyes and sharpener of spines, where no man returns and no voices are heard. The castle of fire, the king of crimson skies, the reaper of dreams flees from the eyes of Yash.
This is definitely getting into some, like, Eldritch God, otherworldly shit. I like this shit, though, man.
The last scream of the nameless folk beyond the sea. Men scream out and are silenced. The light of the sun invites order to the most fundamental nature of this world, and the Yash abhors it. Wrath. 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 This would seem to be the redacted entity mentioned only briefly at the start.
Right.
The greatest of the three profanities, and what sounds like quite a cosmic horror.
No kidding.
Enough history, though. Let's bring things back to the present with the Foundation's containment efforts of S, E, and K. K first came to the attention of the Foundation in 1964, when it passed over the northern USSR and was mistaken for an experimental US aircraft, causing Soviet fighters to engage it. K rapidly ascended and disappeared from sight before re-engaging the fighters at high speeds and quickly destroying them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's probably
Since
a
then,
no-no.
K has only been detected a handful of times, mostly due to visual distortions caused by its reflective skin. It seems to follow a vague pattern over the Earth, often passing over the containment sites of S and E, as well as something else which is redacted. E was found shortly after the Foundation received the Conington set, following up on some coordinates in one of the tomes.
Yeah, that would make
This
sense.
led them to a thermal anomaly beneath a lake, and their investigations ended up opening a fissure beneath the lake, causing temperatures to rapidly drop as E was released from the thermal vent it was trapped in. An MTF was brought in to contain the entity, but its temperature-draining effect made this difficult. Worse still, E was beginning to move towards the nearest population center, resulting in the MTF utilizing long-range artillery weapons to bombard it. The combination of a controlled gas explosion next to E and a mass of molten slag being dropped on top of it by remote drone led to the entity finally being contained. As for S, the Foundation administrator had mentioned the site of the cave in his notes as a location of interest.
The administrator, huh?
Since other occult investigative organizations had known about the cave for some time. Up until Foundation involvement, though, they believed that the cave itself was an anomaly, since no one who had gone in had ever come back out. On June 9th, 2002, 3 months after the containment of E, K was seen diverting from its normal flight pattern, heading towards an area in the North Sea. For some reason, K had suddenly engaged with a global occult coalition transport ship, an action that had so far never been recorded, as K only normally attacked when provoked. The Foundation swooped in to assist, and managed to drive away K from the transport ship.
How are you gonna do that, right? Like, what can you do to it? Because of its, like, essentially reflective nature, like, what are you able to do to it, right? Like, you would have to find out something that would, like, be like a poison to it or something, like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of what you could do to, like, deter it and get it to drive it away. Like, I guess maybe some kind of sound, or maybe some kind of, like, temperature difference, or something that would, like, something that would make its, like, natural state of being, like, uncomfortable and make it want to get away. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to think of what you would do to do that, though, right? Like, I don't know, would setting, like, a nuke off somewhere near it, but not at it, and the blast wave would, like, would the blast wave and the heat just reflect off of it, though, or would it actually affect it? You know what I'm saying? Like, interesting. What's up, Ryan? We're watching some SCP stuff at the moment.
They then offered transport assistance to the ship, but the GOC refused and continued on, eventually docking in Norway. At the same time that this skirmish was going on, E had become increasingly active, necessitating the activation of previously untested technology to further increase the containment temperature. Also, several tremors were felt near the site of S. And
you know, I wonder, like, because there's 4 entities, right? There's the S, E, and K, and then there's a redacted one, right? And there were 4 knights, and it was mentioned that the 4 knights heard the word of the, you know, the voice of the elf who was buried underground. So, like, and then they didn't answer their king, and that's how the king's, you know, kingdom became destroyed because it was cursed, etc., etc. So, like, were these are these 4 knights these creatures now? Were they like cursed and turned into these creatures? You know what I'm saying? Is that like an outcome that happened? That's what I feel like I'm getting so far, but maybe I'm mistaken. You know, I don't know.
And seismographs revealed that a large portion of the cave system had collapsed, and S has since moved upwards no less than 70 meters.
Oh shit.
So yeah, it would seem that the GOC were up to some shenanigans, and they've got the 3 entities upset.
Good job,
Sometime
GOC.
after those events, the Foundation received a transmission from the GOC, informing the Foundation that they are forbidden from further involvement with 3 specific paranormal entities. The first is given the codename Mars by the GOC, a massive winged scorpioid entity, K. The second is called Pluto, a large human-like entity that dramatically alters the total energy of the system directly surrounding it, E. The third, though, is called Eros, a small, partially mummified, vaguely human-like entity currently in possession of the GOC. We haven't really heard about this one yet, and the Foundation doesn't believe that Eros is one of the 3 entities described in the Conington set, meaning not one of the 3 profane entities.
Right.
The GOC know that the Foundation have E, and tell them to make every effort to destroy it, as well as turn over all info they have about it and the other 2 entities to the GOC.
Interesting. I haven't heard any kind of stories so far at all about the GOC ever, like, really threatening the SCP like this.
See, the GOC don't have the information from the Conington set, but the Foundation doesn't have some info that the GOC have found.
Right.
Meaning no one's playing with a full hand of cards.
So it would be... Oh, excuse me. It would be like a good situation there to, like, exchange notes and work together, you know, instead of just like, you know, hey, making demands and essentially starting fights.
The GOC tells them that the Russians managed to get a tracking device on K a few years ago, allowing them to accurately follow its path. It seems to be looking for something. They believe that E, K, and the Eros entity they have are the 3 profanities, and they're looking for the princess that cursed them into existence. Following K's path, it appears to be favoring someplace in France, the cave where S is located. They thought that Eros was the princess at first, but it's too small to be a human woman, and the physiology is all wrong. Like I said, the GOC don't have all the info, and they have no idea that fairies were involved.
Right.
This means that S is not the princess.
Right.
Eros is. They've been trying to kill Eros to weaken the princess, which they believe to be in the cave, not realizing that Eros is the princess. K attacked their transport ship containing Eros to free her, because only the princess can fully control the 3 of them, including the profane Dark, which is the entity in the cave. The Foundation realizes at this point...
That makes sense, because as long as it's in complete darkness and you don't actually get like an actual visual or any idea of what it looks like, you're fine. But any kind of... If you take a look at it, whether it be through remotes or for pictures or whatever, that's when, you know, your eyes just get burnt out and, you know, your insides turn to acid and you kind of melt. That makes sense.
That things are very close to complete disaster, and rush to completely seal in the cave while trying to figure out a way to shoot K out of the sky. All in all, this is just a lot of fun world building, with glimpses of past anomalous civilizations, and the way that ancient history in the SCP universe often sticks around to complicate the present. I mostly covered this SCP to provide some background info for another SCP, 4840, but it's a great article on its own too. Funny that this all came about because a single king wasn't satisfied with his kingdom.
True.
And unfortunately attacked some very wrathful foes.
Which is also interesting because they were also in the midst of fighting the Bigfoot creatures, so it's like that should also give you an indication of how powerful the Bigfoot creatures were as a species as well, if they were able to still battle these fairies, even though the fairies had the ability to do curses and things like this. You know what I mean? Though I guess we aren't really given an idea of how well the battle is going, although we know from the SCP-1000 story that seemingly the Bigfoot species was wiped out overnight. So, yeah. Anyway. Do we have a quote here? We do. The last of the profanes that lay upon the doom of the house of Apollyon was one with no depiction in any text, save for a black smear. This was the king of horrors, the profane dark, the one that festered in the enemy's grave until it soaked through the earth and burst forth like a fetid tide. The curse on the Sky King's lips as it pulled him into the void called this great terror Yash, the last foe of man. Will that Lahire's sword, Lancelot's mace, Hector's spear, and Ogre's faith, the full might of the sullen sorrow was brought to bear on Apollyon's broken heart, which shattered with his ruined kingdom. Wrath he spoke, wrath, wrath, wrath. Okay. Well, there we have it. It was SCP-4812 Wrath. I believe this is like the first in a series of demons that we're going to go through here in the Katsuverse following the Ouroboros cycle. So we'll be following up with more of those as we go along, and I'll get those out as we can. So that was, again, SCP-4812 Wrath. Links will be down below in the description. As always, to the original video, without my commentary and reaction, and to the Exploring Series channel. So if you could please do me a favor, click those links, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. And if you enjoy the Exploring Series content, go give the man a sub, as he definitely deserves it. Makes a lot of wonderful content for the SCP universe and many more. So go over there, give the man a like, give the man a sub, check out his stuff. If you'd like to join us when we do these reactions live, we'd love to have you guys come in here and join our discussions. You're more than welcome to. There is a join button and a link in the description down below the video. You can take a look at the YouTube membership tiers and benefits they offer, see if any of them have any interest for you if you'd like to. You can get early access to videos. You can join us when we do live reactions. You can get priority in any kind of reaction requests you might have, etc., etc. So take a look, see if any of those have any interest for you, if you decide you want to take your sport to the next level. But thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and the channel grow. And yeah, thank you very much. Hope you're having yourselves a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys on the next